Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Point. I'm your host, Priya Sam, and today I'm thrilled to speak with Global National's weekend anchor, Farah Nasser. Farah is an award-winning journalist with a career that spans more than 2 decades. She's also a member of the board of directors of the Canadian Journalism Foundation and serves as a mentor for the Canadian Association of Journalists. Farah's recent turning point came last fall when she decided to take a leave of absence from work. We'll hear more about that shortly. Farah, welcome to Turning Point.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And I should mention to everyone that we actually work together at Global Toronto.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
And I know we've kept in touch a little on social media, but I haven't seen you since then. So it's really nice to just see you again.
You too.
Congrats on your role anchoring Global National's weekend show. How's it going so far?
So far, so good. It's been great. It's really nice to work with the team, and it's a brand new team. So I'm still finding my way a little, but it's a really great group of very smart people who I learned from, and that's why I really love it, and that's why I made the shift.
Oh, that's really great to hear that it's going so well. I know when I heard the announcement, I believe it was in June, right? So just a few months ago.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I was just so thrilled for you. And you, of course, have, you were working on Global Toronto before that, but you've covered international stories. You, I believe, were with CNN in India for a short time. So how are you feeling about kind of that shift from local, I guess, to national and international?
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, I've always been so interested in international news and how it kind of affects us here. So, it's something natural, like that I read about anyway. So it I think was a really good fit, and seeing things a bit bigger picture. I mean, it's definitely a shift of what you're what you're thinking about, but yeah, it's been great. It's been a real pleasure to kind of go to Washington to cover the election and to cover the Queen, this moment in history with her funeral and that kind of thing. So yeah, I've always wanted this front row ticket to history. This is the reason we do our jobs, and why you did too. And I think it's really been a pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. A front row ticket to history. You're right. That's such a perfect description. Before we get to your turning point, I would actually love to go back in time a little bit and just hear about how you became interested in journalism in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. I was very young when my dad started. We watched the news together a lot, but every morning he'd bring in a newspaper article. He'd clip out an article, and we'd talk about it. And this was like when I was, I think, like 6 or something, or 5, or when I started to read. And we would talk about it. And eventually the conversations went into democracy and about civil rights. And it was about, all kinds of things happening, the environment and politics and all that stuff. So it was our every morning kind of thing. And we would talk about it, and it just kind of got me interested. And then for show and tell, I would bring newspaper articles because, I remember bringing an article about the Meech Lake Accord, and the kids were like, what? This is not interesting at all. So, but it was really interesting to me. And then I just did a co-op placement in high school at a Rogers Cable, which I'm sure a lot of people have done, maybe you. And then we kind of went from there. I just felt like I found my calling.
That's pretty neat that it happened at such a young age, and pretty organically kind of given by what you were surrounded with your dad.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And I think my mom also she had friends from all walks of life. Like she had friends who were gay. This was like in the 80s, and who were, racialized and all kinds of different people. And she would tell me about their life experiences. And I got a real broad perspective about the world that way. And not the world, I should say, actually people, right? So where they're from and what their challenges are, and intersectionality and all that kind of stuff. And so that also really got me interested in stories and people's stories.
So after you kind of developed this interest at a young age, you have this internship at Rogers. And then what was your first job in journalism?
Oh, good question. My first journalism job was Was it 10? Yeah, it was when I um, was doing a placement. It's called Summer Beat Reporting for 1010 for News Talk 1010. There was a position, and you know in the summer you'd go and you'd report it. And that summer, so much was happening. Like it was SARS. There was, well, I can't even remember. There was this big garbage strike. There was all kinds of things happening, and it was like every day. And you know, I thought every story was the most important, and I was so excited to go and cover it. And I would even go when I wasn't even working. I remember there was like some sinkhole or something, this giant sinkhole, and it was a weekend, and there was an email, or I don't even know if it was an email. There must have been anyway. And I went on my own and just was like interested in everything. I felt like this kind of press access to see these things, to experience it, I thought was so neat. So that was my first journalism job, and it paid nothing, but I would have probably done it for free.
It's interesting because so much of this is resonating with me. I feel like I also remember, you know, coming in on my days off during my first job, which I was actually kind of working behind the scenes at a TV station. But I think that you're hitting on something that so many of us experience, and in journalism, or just early in our careers. But you have to do what you can do, right? And you have to take those opportunities and come in on the weekend, because that's really how you get that exposure. And the summer is such a great time to get to cover some of those big stories that you were talking about too, when everyone's on vacation.
Yeah, and it was kind of sad in a way, because my friends were all backpacking over in Europe, and I made the choice to, you know, stay home and do this. And actually before that, that was my first on-air job. My first off-air job was also behind the scenes. I had called into 1010, the radio station. One night my girlfriends and I were all in the car. We were headed to a club, and you know, they all wanted to listen to music. I was like, I wanted to listen to talk radio, and it was my turn. So I did. And there was a call-in segment about a teacher strike. And so I called in to talk about it and give a student perspective. And then the host, I can't remember, I think we just hit it off, and he said, you want to come in next week and see what we do? And I did. And then somebody had quit, the weekend producer, and they were like, do you want the job? And I was like, of course. So I was producing the weekends, and then it turned out to be a summer beat reporter position after that. But it was, again, like you said, right place, right time. I think there's a adage about how preparation and opportunity equals success, something like that. But that's what it was. I think I was naturally prepared for this because I was interested, and then opportunities came, and then it just kind of fit together.
Okay, that's a wild story. You're on your way to a club. You convince your friends to put talk radio on, which is a feat in itself. And then you call in, somehow hit it off with the producer, and get a job out of it. Like, if you write a book, that needs to be your opening.
It does it? Okay. Yeah, it was, I don't even know how they let me listen to talk radio. I still remember where we were parked. It was Leslie and Lakeshore, and I made them stop. I think we went to get a burger. I don't know what. And we were stopped there, and they're like, can we go? Like, why are you talking to these people? Like, we have to go. We're all like decked out in our club gear. And I'm like, so about to strike, you know?
That's incredible. I think, you know, for a lot of people, these like interests develop later in life. So I think it's really cool to hear this trajectory of you talking with your dad about stories at such a young age, you know, this passion continuing to grow. And obviously you kind of stayed on this course all the way through, which is, I mean, I just think it's rare. You know, I think you hear a lot of people at a young age, you kind of go through these phases of wanting to do different things. But it sounds like for you knew that you wanted to pursue journalism or some form of current affairs and news from a young age.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny you say that, because I look at these young people now and I'm so impressed. Like, you know, we used to work at the mall as our first job or whatever. And so many young people are like entrepreneurs now, and they're doing their own content, and it's just, it's mind boggling. Like I was like a cog in a wheel, but these people are, you know, doing their own thing, starting their own podcast, doing all kinds of things. And it's so impressive.
Yeah. The media world is an exciting and very shifting place in a lot of ways, I think, right now. Actually, speaking of that, you were co-anchor of Global Toronto's Evening News, a position you started in 2015 when your biggest turning point happened. So it was earlier this year when you decided to take a leave of absence from work. So tell me about making that decision.
So it was a very, 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 very hard decision. So when I started Global Toronto, I was pregnant, and it was a really tough thing because, you're starting your dream job and you're pregnant at the same time, and with my second. And they were very kind to still like give me the job, right? I said, look, I'm not going to put this in the press or sue you, but my family's my priority. It's not this job. Like, I know it's a new job and it's wonderful, but this baby's my priority. And they said, we totally understand. I said, so you're taking this kid with me, and they totally got it. And, but we decided together that I would take a short mat leave, a very short mat leave. It was, I think 10 or 11 weeks. And I went back to work. And since then, I feel like it's been, you just get on this train, right? That just keeps going so fast. And you see the stops go by, but you can't get off, right? You're just going and going and going. And I'm like the ultimate multitasker. Like every part of my day was taken, and everything was like doing three things at the same time, right? It wasn't like focusing on one thing. And I was always like driving to here, picking up the kids, putting the bat, everything, my parents, taking care of everybody. And so I basically was forced to stop at one of those train stops that I mentioned. Like, I was forced to. We had a really serious family emergency in my immediate family. And it was, I don't want to get into that, but it was a life-changing moment. And it was very, very scary. So I had to stop, and I had to take care of my family member. And going through that process, a lot of stuff came out for me. It was like kind of like when you stop and just everything kind of comes out. And that's how it felt. It was just it was like I was taking care of someone, and then they were getting better, and I realized I wasn't better. I wasn't able to do the regular functions that I was usually able to do. And during the pandemic, as you know, I mean, everything was much, much harder, and especially for women. So it just kind of all like came out. And I thought, and every week I was calling, I'm like, I'll be back next week. I'll be back next week. I'll be back next week. And our bosses at Global are amazing, And the head of our organization, Ward Smith, called me and said, you don't have to do this. Like, you need to, we want you back when you're good and ready to come back. Like, I don't want you to come back and be, have a hard time, and your career is not going to suffer. Like, you take the time you need. You're valuable, and we want to see you grow, and this is the long game, and you just take your time. So I kind of felt like I needed that permission. And he even said, he goes, you don't need my permission for this, but I kind of needed it just to know from him, as somebody who I really look up to, that it was, and the head of our organization, that it was okay for me to take that time. And so that's what I did. I took time, and everything slowly started coming out. And, I'm like a list maker, have to get stuff done kind of person. And I was like, okay, I got to use this time. I can't so I started taking like online courses about, everything from parenting to therapy to learning about myself, to trauma, to things like that. And I did therapy like it was my job. I did therapy, like I did, I think 5 hours a week of therapy at one point. And I was really digging deep into things that I hadn't addressed in my past. And specifically, the death of my son. I had done therapy because of it. I had my older son is a twin. His brother passed away in utero. I had to carry him after he had passed away for months, and because I had to give birth to both of them when my other son was obviously ready. So that was really traumatic, and it was something that I dealt with in therapy, but I didn't really deal with it. I did it to kind of tick a box and say, I did this. So that came out. A lot of stuff came out. A lot of guilt associated with that. A lot of blame, a lot of shame, and then other things in my past. So it was very, very. It was a turning point. It's made me a different person. I'm a different person than I was before all of this. I'm a lot kinder to myself. I don't need to be perfect. I have a problem with perfectionism. I still do, but I'm really working on it. And I'm working on my needs, and I'm confident in myself. I'm much more confident in myself than I was before all this happened. So it's been a gift. It's truly been a gift to be given this time off from work, from Global. And he was right. It is the long game, and I'm a better employee. I understand a lot more. And especially when you're doing interviews, trauma informed interviews and things like that, having gone through something, it's a lot, the stories are more nuanced, they're deeper. And I think, I'm able to separate myself from them, which I don't think I was for many, many years.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, because I think, when you were talking at the beginning about just being so busy and kind of keep going and multitasking, and there was all of this stuff building up right in the background that there was no space to process. I'm sure some of that trauma and some of those incidents from the past, like you mentioned, the stillbirth of your son. And so then when you had this break and you had this time, I think, I think especially for women, there's a lot of guilt in those moments about, and you touched on it too, just taking time off and, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to lose out on a promotion, for example? But I think hearing you say just how valuable it was to take that time. And I really like this idea of thinking of the long game. And I mean, I'm sure, and you can, I would love to hear more about this, but I'm sure going through that and pulling up those painful experiences, I'm sure it was really hard and exhausting in the moment too.
It was so exhausting. Like, therapy is work. People think that, it is, and I'd done it in the past, but not like this. Like, this was like intense. And, it was very difficult. And I was in very dark places at times, I was in very dark places. I mean, I remember once I had to pull my husband out of his office. He works from home. And I was like, you need to walk with me because I'm very scared about what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I just don't feel good. And he was like, of course. And we just went for this, like, he left work and we went out for a really, really long walk. And it was like, it was just not me. Like, I'm in control of everything, but to be scared like that after a bunch of stuff came out in therapy, like it's terrifying. And you're a mother, you got to take care of everybody. Right. So for you to go through that, you're like, what? No, this is not right. But thankfully, I'm very, very thankful. And I'm very grateful that we were able to, because it's expensive too, right? Therapy. So we were able I was able to do that. I was able to have the time off. I have a supportive spouse. In that time, it was really interesting because I only talked to like one or two friends. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I cocooned completely. And people understood that. And I think I was very, very blessed. I often think about all these other women who don't have the benefits that I have and the support structure and aren't able to process. And I think about like refugee women that came here and God knows what they saw and what they're processing and not being able to kind of unpack that and how challenging that must be. So I feel very, very grateful.
You talk about therapy, about having this support system. Was there anything else that really helped you during this time?
Meditation. I mean, I've always done it, but meditation and exercise really helped. And I think it was just gratitude. Like, it was just constantly reminding myself, like I'd go out, sit in the sun and just kind of like really make it a routine to remind myself all the amazing things that I have and that I'm very lucky to have. And that really helped. Sometimes you can't see it when you're in this kind of funk. It doesn't matter, but it was kind of a forced practice I did. I made myself do this every day. There was something to be grateful for.
I think that's a lesson we can all certainly take from this too. Is I also have a gratitude practice. I need it to be more consistent, but I found during the times when I start my day with that first thing I do is write down 3 things I'm grateful for. It just changes. It changes the whole day.
Totally. And now actually I do it before. I would sit in the sun and I'd have a routine. Now I do it before I even get out of bed. So, and my husband knows now. So he's like, okay, what are you grateful for? Like, this morning he said it. He was like, it's raining and what are you grateful for? I'm like, well, rain's a blessing. And, it helps the plants. And, so it's something that now I literally do it before I even see the kids, before I brush my teeth. I just do it from bed and it's quick, easy, but it gets my mind going.
Yeah, absolutely. when we were talking before about like the media and kind of, I think it was really great to hear actually your experience about the support you had from Global to take this time up because time off and time for yourself, because the media has been, in the news, let's say, a lot lately, especially when it comes to how racialized journalists and women are treated. Excuse me. Of course, I was also a racialized woman in journalism like you. I experienced a lot of challenges along the way. So I guess I wonder, what has it been like for you to see these stories and also to be reporting on them?
Yeah, I have to say it's challenging, and it's also heartbreaking to see women that you've worked with come out, and I get it because I believe them because I've seen it with my own eyes. What has happened, and so um, it's really hard. But I also feel like it's cathartic, and I feel like it's amazing that we can actually talk about it, right? Like it's amazing that we're at this place where we can bring this up to the forefront. This is something that we all thought was so normal for so long. And I remember during the Me Too movement, like, and even during this racial reckoning, it was these things that come out. It was like, I just thought that's how we had to be. That's just how this industry was. This is just how things go. Like, you want to be in this industry, you got to deal with that. That's the ugly side of it, but you deal with it and you just do what you want, you do your work, and you let your work speak for itself. But it was just, it's amazing that now women are able to come out, to speak out, to say their piece. And it's hard and it's hurtful, and they're so brave, to be able to do that. I mean, I've gone through a lot. I'm sure you have, we all have. And I think all this stuff is going to be beneficial for the future, for future journalists, not only journalists, future women in the industry. I mean, there's such a long way to go, in so many ways, parity, pay equity, like all kinds of stuff. But I think this is a really good step to get this out there. And I think we need to really remember that it takes a lot to get your story out. It's not something that is an easy thing to do. So when people are criticizing or saying things, that part really bugs me because it's again, I believe these women. I've seen it. It happens. Like it's happened. It's happened to me. It's happened to so many women. And I hope that a lot of the bosses that we see and a lot of the leaders in various organizations kind of recognize that and really, really make change. And it's not just men, by the way. There's also women at the top who are not, who've treated people this way. And there's even racialized women at the top who have done that. Like, so it's not just, I'm not just saying it's all white men. It's kind of, it's systemic. It's been ingrained. And so for things to change, we have to have this movement with that. I say this all the time, but, with every revolution or change, there's a pendulum swing. There has to be, right? It has to go all the way this way to get to a kind of middle point. So I think that's what's happening.
You're absolutely right, and I think I agree. I think there has been a lot of there are a lot of positive steps that have been taken, and as you say, there's still a long way to go. But it is positive to see some change. And as I was kind of preparing for this interview, I was reading some other articles you've done and interviews, and I know you talked about the stillbirth of your son, and I remember when you tweeted about this in 2021, so about 8 years after your experience. And I remember thinking at the time that there was a shift happening then in journalists being able to share their personal experiences more, because I think for so long there was this idea of like, you're a journalist, you don't share, no emotion, you don't share anything personal, you're completely like unbiased without opinion. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, I think I saw so many people responded to you and there was so much humanity in the responses. And I wondered if you could kind of talk a little bit about that time and sharing something so personal at a time when maybe not everyone was doing that, especially journalists.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it took me 8 years to even talk about it. Like it's something that's still hard to talk about. And this is just one thing that one person has gone through. You know what I mean? Like and I'm sure I got some hateful tweets too, which, you do and you ignore, or you don't look at, but it's, I find it hard when people say that, we have to just be completely separate from the news, from stories. And I think I tweeted that when was it Chrissy Teigen? Yeah. Right. So
Yes.
she had a stillbirth, and it brought out kind of trauma for me, because it kind of was, I was so proud of her for going public, and she was getting so much hate, and it was making me so mad, because it's not easy to do that. It's so hard to talk about. Like I said, it took me 8 years to even open up about that. So I think we are people too, right? We are people. We have our opinions. Of course, when we're reporting, we don't have our opinions. We're trying to find both sides. We're trying to understand the context and what's behind a story and that kind of thing. But we're also people that have dealt with a lot of stuff, and we have our own baggage. We're not blank slates. So I think that has to be considered. When you're watching a journalist. I mean, it's nobody's job to care about what I went through, and again, one person. But if it helps at all anyone, if it just helps one person to say that, like, you're not alone, that's why I did it. And that's why I'm talking to you about, this mental health situation, because I want people to know that it's not something that you should be shameful about or embarrassed about, even if you're a woman in leadership. I mean, God, I think everybody needs therapy. I think national healthcare, we need to have a national therapy plan. Like, everybody in this world needs therapy, and we need to smash that stigma, because it's so important. And we're just seeing like a little bit of the effects of it from COVID, and it's just going to keep going. So, to me, I really I feel like I'm the poster child for therapy. Like, if you're questioning whether to get therapy and you're watching this, get it. It's going to change your life.
Agree, plus 1,000 to that. I think therapy has definitely helped me through my hardest times as well, and even on an ongoing basis. Pulling on threads that maybe I haven't pulled on before, and kind of understanding how everything is connected. So yeah, I think that is such an important message, and I agree. I've never met a person who couldn't or hasn't benefited from
Yeah,
therapy.
exactly.
So
It's like, you
yeah.
don't regret it. You learn so much about yourself. And I think the one thing that I really learned was just how high my expectations were of myself. And my whole life, people have said, "You're so hard on yourself. You're so hard on yourself." And I was like, whatever, I don't even understand what that means. But now I get it. Like, I get how I was my own enemy, trying to get everything perfect, trying to be there for everybody, trying to make sure that everything was taken care of, everyone was taken care of around me. And I did that to a fault, in a way.
Did you have any aha moments in therapy around specifically perfectionism?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't think of one specific moment, but I think it was the therapist talking, like, I think the therapist was saying to me, and again, I had two different, anyway, I had two different therapists, and one to do specific work called EMDR, and one just as talk therapy. And the one I was doing talk therapy with, she just one day just sat with me, and she's like, "You're amazing. Like, you've done all this stuff." Like, she just started listing stuff that I had done in my life and things I'd overcome and all. And I was like, that was kind of an aha moment where I was like, I'm amazing. Like, what am I worried about? Like, I'm amazing. And I remember seeing, actually, your former colleague, Anne Marie Medawake, we were at a dinner together, and we were talking about something, and she's like, "You're amazing." I'm like, "You're amazing." And I was like, "I am amazing." And she's like, "So am I." Like, we don't give ourselves enough credit. It was this moment, we were just holding hands, and we were just like being like, "I've done this and I've done this." And it was just this thing that you don't think about, right? You're always criticizing yourself. You're always finding how I can do better, what I can do. But when you think about all the things you've accomplished in life, when you have somebody kind of just spewing at you, "You've done this and this," it's like, whoa. And it's not even just my bio. It's like stuff I've overcome in life, battle scars that I have, and how I've handled this, and how I've helped people through things, and how I've talked about, before the racial reckoning, as I was doing a lot of this coverage, right? Way before. So, and it was hard because people were awful to me about it. And just like those kind of accomplishments, you think about it and you're like, I'm good enough. I am enough. And I wrote that in my journal all the time. Like I have an old school day planner, and I would write that like every week, week after week, I'd write on the top, I am enough, because I am enough, you know? And so, yeah, I think that was the aha moment for me.
Yeah, wow, that's a beautiful experience. And it really kind of ties back into what you said before about like you're just not the same person anymore after
Mhm.
going through this experience.
Yeah.
How,
And it's changed my relationships too, in a way, right? Because it's like, I know what I'm worth. So, any toxic relationships, any toxic family members, anybody like that, it's like before, I needed to be liked. I needed to be, the darling of the community, of the family, of all, this stuff. And now I'm like, I'm doing my best here. I'm doing all I can. Not good enough for you. That's you. I'm going to do everything I can. Right. So,
yeah, that's a very empowering realization to
mhm.
come to. How has it impacted your work and you as a journalist going through this?
I think it's helped me see different perspectives. And, I was, as you know, being on air is a very vulnerable thing. Like it's, you mess something up, then you overthink it, then you mess something else up, then you're overthinking it, and then you do a story and you're like, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. Um, and I don't overthink it as much anymore. Like there was points where I couldn't even watch myself because in my career, because it would make me so upset. It would just rile me up so much that I could have done this different. And if you were to watch it, you'd say, that was an amazing newscast. But me, I would pick every little tiny little thing. And I wish I could redo it, and I would just say like, anyway, it had to be perfect, perfect, perfect. And now I'm not like that. And I think it's given me more confidence on the desk. I think it's given me more confidence in interviews to say, again, I'm enough. I'm doing everything I can. And I'm actually not bad at this. Like I don't suck, so it's that kind of realization that I'm here for a reason. Like I still have a hard time saying it, but I'm here for a reason. There's not, um, yeah.
Yeah, well, and as someone who has worked with you, I mean, I can attest to this. You are absolutely amazing. You're a role model for so many young journalists. And I know that I mentioned in the intro that you do work as a mentor as well. So tell me about your passion for mentorship and working with young journalists.
Priya, when I started in this industry, I had nobody, not one person. There was no, forget even um, people of color. Women weren't even helping me. Like there were no women to help, right? And the women who were there were so protective of their positions that they didn't want to help. And if there was somebody who was racialized, there was that thought that there was only room for one person who was racialized. So there could be two of you. So she's not going to help you. You know what I mean? And so it was such a toxic culture in that way, right? Like it was, and I had some people who obviously didn't see me as a threat helping, but it wasn't really what I needed. I needed somebody who kind of understood me a little bit more. I mean, having said that, I had great people who kind of made me better as a journalist and would really like, go through my scripts and really help me learn. But I needed kind of somebody to hold my hand and be like, "You're not making this up. This is really unfair, and this man is saying this, and that's not right. And you don't have to just ignore that. You should go tell somebody." I needed that person to say, "This is not okay. What's happening to you, and how you're being treated, and that kind of thing." And so I never had that. So I always wanted to kind of help women after that. And it's funny because there's so many women at the beginning now, not as much, but they're like, they weren't sure what to make of me because they were like, why are you helping me? Are you tricking me? Like I remember one person in particular told me that after and said, I wasn't sure. I thought you were fake. I thought you weren't, like, I didn't know why you wanted to help me because I would be, competing against you at some point. But I truly believe, and I was right, there's room for all of us. There's room for many of us. It's not my place or this person's place. We're all so different. And one piece of advice I got was, let your work speak for itself. Like you don't have to worry about anybody else. You just do your work and you just let your work speak for yourself. And I really have gone through that adage, people try to take you down or whatever. And it's happened. It's happened to me. But you just do your work. You just do your work to the best of your ability. And if you're passionate about it and you love it, you just keep going.
It's really incredible that now you can be that person that you wished you had.
Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah. I was really nodding along as you were kind of going as you were talking there, because I definitely had similar experiences where I just assumed, especially in my first jobs, like, oh, the women I work with are going to help me, or yeah, like the racialized journalists, I'm sure we're all going to be supporting each other. And of course there was some of that, but there was a lot of like shocking moments where like the things you mentioned, like the competition, or there's only room for one of us. That was kind of the overwhelming feeling. And I think in those moments when you don't have someone who looks like you or who has similar experiences to you, you can get really in your head about like, okay, well, that felt like a racist comment, but am I being overly sensitive? Am
Mm.
I overthinking this? And so for you to be able to be that person now for some of these young journalists, it must be like very empowering for you given what you experienced.
It really is. And I see myself in them, right? I see these questions and these challenges, and I've been through it. So it's really nice to be able to guide them. And maybe that was the reason. Maybe people hadn't been through it. So it was hard to guide me through these things, right? So, but it's really, yeah, it's really amazing to have conversations and again, to see people are so surprised, like, or not, maybe not now, but they were like, just why would you root for me? I'm going to be working at your station, and, I'm also brown, and that kind of thing. But again, like I said, none of us have the capacity to do everything. So it's great to have other people in the mix. It actually helps me. It's a little selfish, right? To fill in or to do whatever. It's a great thing. So yeah, I know it's a wonderful, wonderful way to give back. And I get so much out of it. Like, I learned so much too from these women and men too.
Yeah. I like your message of there's room for all of us. I think that's a really important takeaway. It's only been a few months since your biggest turning point. You have a new role as the anchor of Global National's weekend show now. So as you reflect back on everything that's happened since you took your leave of absence, really took this time to focus on your mental health, what would you say was your biggest learning?
I think it's that this too shall pass. I think it's that I really learned that it's not forever. When you're in a moment, you think it's just forever and nothing's going to get better. And you're just so stuck in that moment. And I'm able to see moments for what they are. They're moments in time. And it's kind of that being able to see that big picture view. And even on air, like even an interview that goes bad, I would dwell on it for months. I'd go through therapy over it sometimes. If it was a big interview, I'd say, this is consuming me, and now I think of that as a moment, right? That moment is past. We're going to keep going. We're going to remember that moment, but we're going to keep going, and that is really helpful. And again, the perfectionism thing is just such a big thing for me. It's a shift in the way I think it's a shift in the way I go into the world, the way I am, that I'm enough. And this is who I am. And I don't have, not everyone's going to like me, and that's okay. And my opinion is not, their opinion is not my business, and I always kind of felt that way, but I really feel like it now. I really understand that all these things that I would kind of fixate and be worried about, I'm not worried about anymore, because it's like, I'm going to just do me. I'm going to be me and do me, and I'm enough.
Farah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I feel like there were so many parts of your story and so many of the pieces that you opened up about today that are, so relatable and so helpful, because I think sometimes, especially when we're in our lowest moments, seeing someone who has experienced that and come through it, and, hearing you talk about the challenges of it, but also the reward at the end, I think that really gives a lot of hope to people who will be listening to this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you to all of you for watching and listening today. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review. We also love hearing from you. You can find me on social media at PriyaSam. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and of each other.